You are about to enjoy a Firearms Radio Network podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. Tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting firearms-related.net. Tonight, we are joined by Josh Crosby. I always get to this point, Andy, and you've probably noticed it, where I start like having a weird thing where I can't use my words correctly. And I always pronounce, it doesn't matter what name it is, I always mispronounce either the first or the last name. So tonight we are joined by Josh Crosby of Texas Combat Solutions, and we will be discussing their combat rifle course. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about the class. Before we get into that, though, Josh, introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell them a little bit about yourself and what got you into firearms training.
Yeah, sure. My name's Josh Crosby. I'm a firearms instructor. I'm based outside of Houston, Texas. I've been teaching firearms since 2006. My firearms training started in law enforcement as a police officer. After about 7 years in law enforcement, I wound up in Afghanistan as a contract advisor to a company that was kind of a paramilitary company, and we worked as police mentors and private security detail missions in high threat regions. And a big part of that job was teaching firearms to local nationals and other third country nationals. So in Afghanistan, it was kind of crazy, especially 15 years ago. Just the people that were there. There were soldiers and private soldiers from all over the world working for different companies and in different countries, and you name them, they were there. And we wound up teaching several groups of them. And of course, the AK-47 and the AR-15 platform. Luckily, I was familiar with it. I was a big AR guy to begin with. As soon as I became a cop, that was my favorite weapon by far. And that was what got me into it. I came back from Afghanistan, worked a couple more years in law enforcement, and got another gig actually teaching in the sandbox again. Went back, and that time primarily as an instructor in a non-combat theater, but soldiers who were being deployed to other regions that were in combat. And the same type deal. A lot of for-hire soldiers being hired by different people, different companies, different countries to go and be deployed on missions. So that was all AR-15, and it was a blast. I had students from Egypt and Bolivia and Venezuela and you name it, and working through translators and working through an AR platform. I'm teaching in English. It's going to a Sudanese guy who's then repeating it back in Arabic to whatever student it's there. So I don't know how much gets lost in translation, but it makes you better be on top of your game teaching that platform. And then it kind of evolved from there as I came back, stayed in law enforcement. And I knew that I didn't want to retire 30 years from now just being in law enforcement. And so I started offering the class more and more. And that's kind of where Texas Combat Systems came from initially. That was how it started.
How the heck does teaching folks overseas, how does that compare to, teaching folks in Texas and across the United States? And I guess what are some unique challenges that presented?
Overseas was challenging, obviously. In the combat theater, that presents its own challenges. So you have to find a secure place, or you have your guys that are secure in the range while you're training, especially in that particular location. They had some instances of instructors being killed by their own students who were actually not as much on your side as you thought they were. So that presented some issues. It's 137 degrees and you're having to wear plates as an instructor because you don't know who's going to turn around with that AK and just start mag dumping back at the line. So you learn muzzle control real quick in that environment. It makes it a whole lot easier to come back and watch a line of cops shooting a qualification. I can see muzzle starting to swing a whole lot faster now because at one point, you never knew when it was coming. So that's definitely a difference between teaching stateside versus teaching somewhere else that's not as friendly.
Man, I thought watching Andy contest and work with the 80-year-old guy that learned how to shoot from his uncle was challenging on the range. So that's very interesting. Sounds like a scary day on the range. Sherry, talk to us a little bit about yourself and your background in the firearms world, and what brought you to the combat rifle course.
I live in Los Angeles County, so need I say more? It's crazy out here. I got into training pre-lockdown and just met a group of really nice people that kept inviting me back. And I have had a lot of great training out here. We had an incident happen at our office after hours, and I thought, well, it might be time to learn how to load a gun. And I had no interest into it, and I had no interest in it at all. I wanted to do hot yoga and just wanted nothing to do with it. So fast forward, I met Josh through a girl and a gun in Colorado at our annual conference we have every year, every April, and I took his class 3 years ago and became a big Josh Crosby fan. Took his class a couple months ago and still a big Josh Crosby fan. Intro to AR, I've never picked up an AR. And he was tough on us. He definitely wasn't messing around and corralled all us women together and taught us to shoot. So that's how we met.
So going from it sounded like there's a little bit of reluctance to get into firearms and firearms training. From looking back on where your opinion of firearms was back then, and where it's kind of grown and developed to now, what do you think were some of the biggest misconceptions that you had prior to taking your first firearms course?
Well, back then, let's see, this was probably 3 years before COVID. It wasn't really an issue. We had crime out here, but it wasn't like it is now. I felt pretty safe, and it was scary. It was just a big, scary, tool, and I wanted nothing to do with it. But my first couple trainings, I did a couple privates out here, and I was terrified. I went home paranoid. It took me about 3 months to calm down. I just thought the bad guys are coming, and I just kind of freaked out. And now I'm pretty comfortable with it, but I wanted nothing to do with it. Now I can't imagine going anywhere, leaving my house without it. It's a part of me now, and it has to be out here like anywhere else.
That's awesome. Josh, talk to us a little bit about the combat rifle course. What's the minimum round count, and what are the gear requirements for a student attending that course?
So when we run combat rifle, and I've customized it a couple of different times, but the way I like to run it, it's a 2-day class. And we can start at scratch. We can start at one. And people could call this course Rifle 1 or Intro to Rifle or Figure It Out on the Black Rifle, whatever you want to call it, right? But it's Combat Rifle 1. It's intro to this platform. You should bring 500 rounds of ammunition. I tell people, bring elbow pads and knee pads if you want them. People bring them and go, well, I didn't need them. Okay, well, that's great. Obviously, all your basic safety gear. I stress bring water, bring some electrolytes, bring some snacks. We do not spend a lot of time. There's an initial lecture, especially if I run it in a 16-hour format. We get about 4 hours of lecture in because there's a lot of stuff mentally that we have to go over that people seem to forget about. So I stress that real hard with them to keep them going. Bring the bring the snacks, bring the electrolytes, bring the water, bring the ammo. A lot of times we'll incorporate a pistol into it if that's what they're wanting to do. But generally, I don't. I stay away from the position because the pistols because we get into the transition, and it's hard enough to work the rifle. So slings, I advocate for the slings. I want people to learn how to do it. But at some point in 16 hours, there's only so much you can teach. So if they don't have slings, it's not a big deal. We deck the rifles if they're not using them, and we run 2 or 3 different flights where you're kind of observing the people in front of you. Other than that, I can't really think of anything special, man. It's bare bones, and I run it no different than any law enforcement class or any military class that I've run. I run this class the exact same way.
I love it. It looks like we have another student, Kim, joining us. Kim, thanks for jumping on. Talk to us a little bit about your background in the firearms world and what brought you to this combat rifle course with Josh.
Well, I started shooting probably about 4 years ago with Sherry, who is the other lady on here with me. I took his AR-15 Essentials class, and it was really to learn the essentials. And he was great. He taught us a lot of stuff that, we needed to know. Sorry, I have people in here.
No worries. That's great. What, so prior to taking this class, when did you start shooting?
Probably about 4 years ago.
Okay. Awesome.
Are you also from California, Kim?
I'm not. I'm from Texas.
Okay, because I'm looking in the background and I'm seeing a bunch of Raiders stuff.
Oh, yeah, I'm at my friend's house actually in Arizona.
Oh,
Actually,
man.
we've known each other for 48 years.
That's awesome.
Grew up together across the street from each other.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Now I can't make fun of you for the Raider stuff because it's not even yours.
You can make fun of Derek back there.
You can't make fun of her for Raider stuff because you're a Cowboys fan.
Hey. Still better.
Oh shoot! We probably got a couple Cowboy fans on here.
No, right. I'm so
Awesome. Hey, so getting back to the class, Josh, you said it's a 500 round count minimum, or you're shooting about 500 rounds over the course of 2 days. Elbow pads, knee pads, slings are optional. What about skills? Is there any prerequisite training, or is there a minimum skill set that students should have prior to attending this course?
No, you can come in green on the course. That's not a problem. Even if you've never picked up a rifle before, it's totally fine. So the first 4 hours, we go into a lecture a little bit, and then we kind of do a hands-on lab with the rifle. We break down some nomenclature. We break down the parts of a rifle. I don't really go into field stripping it and all. Basically, I show them what the charging handle looks like. I show them the bolt carrier group, show them how it slides in, slides out, the safety, and the trigger. And that's kind of the extent of it, and we'll go from there. I don't get into zeroing rifles. I tell them that, if it's got iron sights, that's fine. We'll zero them in the class. If it has an optic, please bring it already zeroed. If you don't know how, ask somebody. If you spend time trying to zero optics, you'll just burn through your whole class time. So that's about the only thing I do ask is that if you bring a rifle with an optic, make sure it's at least, punching paper. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least on paper when you show up. But even if you don't know how to load it, that's fine. We'll go through all of it. And we'll go through all of it.
That's how Sherry came in. She came in with, that was her first rifle class ever.
Tim brought me a badass rifle to use because I don't even own one.
I was just going to ask.
Class, I didn't know that. That was your first rifle class?
Mm-hmm. I made her take it.
I didn't want to take it. I'm like, no, that's not my thing. And we like girls' time.
What, speaking of guns that you ran, Kim, what rifle did you run? And then what rifle did you bring Sherry to run during that class?
I have 2 Rock Rivers.
Sorry, I was just taking a little quick note. What, Josh, when we're talking about rifles, what are some of the useless things that students show up to class on their rifle?
Man, people just don't understand stuff. Combat rifle, and I want to say it was a class that Sherry and them Kim were in. It was the same probably year at that conference. I had a lady show up with a great gun, a 6.5 Creedmoor bolt action Savage 10. I think it's an awesome rifle. I'm a huge fan of the Savage 10s, and I'm a huge fan of the 6.5. But it's going to be hard to shoot 500 rounds through that, So try to familiar yourself a little bit with it. But as far as what I see on the ARs, man, optics that don't run, we get a lot of those. So I'll tell them, if you're not sure on optics, just don't buy one, right? You can buy the Magpul. They make a backup sight for training. It's fine, right? Especially on your first setup, we can work through it. People show up with optics that don't run that they buy off of Amazon. If you're buying it off of Amazon for your rifle, it's probably a bad idea. Just keep that in mind. If you made a decision because of price point on something, it's probably a bad idea. I ask people to come to class. I will bring rifles, and I will bring my rifle. I run Trijicon optic, and I run Sons of Liberty rifle. And first thing I'll do is I'll take my rifle and kick it down the range for them and say, now look, this is a tool. I need you to understand that, right? And it's scratched up. It looks like somebody drug it behind a truck. That's okay. It runs every time I pull the trigger. And I try to push that mentality on them that you need gear that runs. And that's one of the hardest things is people get either emotionally attached to gear because someone bought it for them or they bought it. It was their first rifle and they walked in a big box store and bought a 5.56 rifle. And they're like, this is the one for me. And I'm like, man, but it's not. You'll find out that rifle probably won't make it through 500 rounds. And they're like, no, it'll be fine. Okay, well, we'll see.
Josh does not like bedazzled rifles and pink and turquoise rifles in his classes. Don't get him started.
That's what we always say. We pick on the pistol guys with the Kimbers. They walk in, and I just did a concealed carry class up north of Albuquerque, and I was kind of teasing, and I said, raise your hand if you're going to bring a Kimber to class for a range day tomorrow, and I was like, hey, I'm not picking on you guys, but, the high points are going to run better than the Kimbers. And this one guy in class, he's like, nah, no way, man. I've had this Kimber. I've shot it 1,000,000 rounds, blah, blah, blah. And then first round he took gun malfunction, and I said, hold on a second. And I said, it's a Kimber. And everybody just started laughing. So I picked on him a lot, and he was like, nope, I deserve that one. So when you look at your rifles, do you care more, Josh, about internals as far as, upgraded bolts and stuff like that? Or is it just an all-around rifle? Somebody brings in kind of, a lower-end style rifle. What's your kind of thought process on that?
Man, it depends. I've seen some lower-end rifles that run enough for the class. I wouldn't put it in my patrol car, but it's got through a class. But I see some weird stuff, man. When I see, like, huge red flags are, I need you to adjust my gas block for me. Okay, man, hey, that's a problem, or my husband did this, or my boyfriend did this, or, I've got this done to my rifle, or the guy at big box store sold me this. Man, it's a problem. And I try not to call out specific brands, right? But we know those 4 brands sitting on the bottom. Man, when you see the horse running through, you're like, okay, this gun probably isn't going to run very well. But hey, we'll give it a try. And then we start to see the problems. And it's because they don't use the quality materials in them. Certain lowers are okay. The big deal's in the uppers and people building their own ARs. I think it's cool. I think it's a great hobby. I applaud anybody who builds their own ARs. I've been through a couple AR armorers class because I thought it was going to be like something fun to do and relaxing and a good way to get to know that rifle. This is well after I've been an instructor on that platform. I went to the armorer school, and I find nothing enjoyable about it or relaxing or anything. I see springs flying everywhere, detents, and this goes here, and it drives me insane. And so I turned out not to be an AR builder, just an AR shooter. So that's when I question when I see people that have home built rifles. It's a little scary.
If we're looking at the class, what are some of this? I want to kick this over to Kim and Sherry, and then I want to kind of get your perspective as an instructor, and then Sherry, we'll start with you. What was, I guess, your biggest obstacle during that class as a student?
Loading and unloading. Loading. I just had a really hard time. I have a Glock. I have a couple Glocks, and that's it. So for me to be out there on the range, and you feel that pressure. Josh is right next to you, or an instructor, and I had a really hard time. It was awkward. I couldn't really figure it out very well. I have video, and it did not go very well.
I want to take that a little deeper. When you mean loading, are you talking about magazines or running the magazine in the AR and charging it? What do you mean what was more of a struggle for you?
There was a point where you got to like cross over. I can't remember how it worked, but it was confusing to me, and it just wasn't. It was totally a foreign language to me, and I had a really hard time with it. But he helped me out quite a bit, and we got it done. And then running an empty magazine and having to quickly get another one back in place. It wasn't my favorite thing to do.
How about you, Kim? What was maybe a struggle or what was a difficult point of the class?
don't remember anything being really difficult. I think the hardest part for me is finding my target through the site. But everything else seemed pretty easy. It flowed pretty easy.
Josh, I want to come back to that, but before we do that, what are some of the common obstacles, or I guess what are some of the bigger obstacles that students have when they're coming into this class?
Man, manipulating that weapon. You see a lot of stuff, especially in a girl and a gun. And honestly, as far as civilian classes, I don't run many anymore. Almost everything I do now is law enforcement related. But I will run a class if somebody wants to fill one. That's not a problem. I'll do it. It's just not my target audience. But I do it for Girl and a Gun every year, regardless. The Girl and a Gun's a pretty interesting organization, and I know you talked to Robin and got some insight on that. They really are a fun bunch to teach. They really want to learn, which is a nice refresher coming from law enforcement students who literally sometimes just hate their lives and they're sitting in these classes and they don't want to listen to you. So it's nice to be able to teach people who want to learn. But loading the AR, man, loading on a closed bolt. And I'll tell them, I'll say, hey, and of course you'll see the fail to fire or whatever. And I'll be like, I bet that magazine's not in. And she's like, no, the magazine's in. So you walk up and pull it out from the bottom and be like, aha, and I tell them, and I try to be up front. And I keep telling them this is what's going to get me kicked out of a Girl and a Gun is I'll tell them the gun likes it rough. If you remember that will help you with loading that AR, right? The gun likes it rough. If you try to ease that AR magazine in there, especially that polymer magazine with 29 rounds in there on a closed bolt, it is never going to seat, right? I use the push-pull method, slam it in there, and I always tug on a magazine. I'm to the point now where I can't load the weapon without it. And I beat that in their heads. When she's talking about it being stressful, it is stressful because while she's trying to load that magazine, I'm literally in her ear screaming that the gun won't run without bullets in it. It needs bullets to run. Why doesn't your gun have bullets in it? Why are you carrying a broomstick? You should be carrying a rifle. Put bullets in it, it becomes a rifle again. And if you're new to the platform, it is stressful. But it kind of ingrains it in you on how I want that weapon loaded. It's not fancy. It's not flashy. I don't have an Instagram account. But it works every time. Take the old one out, put the new one in, charge the weapon, and get back in the fight. So not being able to load it, sight picture is a huge one. Having an optic that they're not familiar with. I'll see 3x9s, 4x12 scopes, man, you name it. I mean, 6x20, 4x50 on on an AR on a 50-yard range, and you're like, hey, this scope is. She's like, and of course, this is a deal where my husband got it and he said it's a good scope. Well, it is. It's a nice core scope and it's a badass scope. And if you don't want it anymore, I'll take it. However, this scope is for shooting things at 1,000 yards, and as you can see, the target's only 50 yards away. So it's going to cause you a lot of problems if we can only get down to 6 power. Lasers. I think I'm actually going to ban lasers on rifles. Like, I think you know what? I'm against pretty much any gun laws except for that one. If they wanted to ban crimson trace lasers that mount to rifles, I'm okay with that. If you want to ban something, let's ban that. I'd be okay with that. I may call Nancy Pelosi, see if we can't get that done. But those are kind of the big ones. Crappy flashlights. Again, you can't buy it on Amazon, stick it on that weapon, and expect to fight with it. It's just not the way it works. So that's kind of the biggest things is gear that people are attached to for whatever reason, but they didn't research and then don't know how to use it, but are insistent on using it. Oh, and suppressors. Don't bring a suppressor. Just unless you are thoroughly familiar with how that can work, because I've had to pick up suppressors from the end of the firing line themselves, and I had a lady burn a hole in her jog, or not her workout leggings, her shooting leggings, because the can was hot and she didn't realize that it's still hot when you lower it down on the sling. And I'm like, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be hot. She's like, no, it's fine. Guess what? The can's still hot. The heat doesn't go anywhere. So just some things to be aware of. It's combat rifle, but we're staying in a non-combat theater to learn. So it's okay.
Yeah.
Just the extra gear.
It's a good learning curve when the pants melt to your leg from the suppressor. But let me ask you. So, Josh, do you put a prerequisite on the rifle as far as to try to avoid that issue that you talked about, like having some kind of long distance scope for a kind of a fighting rifle course?
I do now. I try to mention, if you have a question about an optic or something, please call me. Please text me. Text me a picture of your gun. Anything, right? Just to avoid some of these problems. But I usually wind up bringing a couple extra guns. We got a couple ARs that we use as just kind of throwdowns that people can beat on. You're not going to hurt them. I'm not a holographic sight guy, but I got a couple old holographic sights that work no matter what. And we'll let students shoot through those. I do want them to see. I want them to see the difference between a low power barrel optic and a red dot and a holographic and iron sights. I want them to see it. So I try not to discourage things, but at the same, I'd rather just work through the problem. But at the same time, some of the stuff is just a little crazy. So I generally try to ask them, especially if I get a question. I always send out my email address and phone number. Hey, this, and I'll give them a brief intro to the class. What are you guys bringing? If you have a rifle, and I get questions like, whatever. I got a purple handguard off of Etsy. Is it going to be okay? Probably not. Not to be Debbie Downer here, but this shit's probably not going to run. So let's just go with whatever came from the factory, and I can at least work on that.
Before we get off the gear discussion, we have a question from Scott Tier, one of our instructors. Any thoughts on preferred barrel length for ARs?
I guess we'll go with for what purpose, but it's just for the class. Man, 16s are fine. I run my 13.7. I love it. It's got the the fixed muzzle device on it, which brings it to whatever compliance it is. It's kind of weird to say I'm not a gun guy. So it's got to be 16 inches, 16.1, right? That's whatever it is. That's great. I've only had a couple 10.5s that show up in class, 11.5s. I haven't seen it bring any benefit to anybody. If you can't run a 16-inch rifle, you probably can't run an 11.5-inch rifle. And you're not gaining anything by it. So bring something that you own, bring something legal. Please don't show up with something please don't bring a 10.5 and not be square with the with the alphabet boys either. Don't do that to me. I don't need those kind of problems. But yeah, I've had plenty of 20-inch rifles, the H bar, the big one. Hey, bring them. Other than being a little heavy, no one seemed to have any issues with them.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was off mute or on mute. Figure out how to use my mute button. A couple more episodes in. Cam, as a student, what were some of the biggest takeaways that you had from that class, and how did you work through the issues that you were having with finding the target?
Josh really helped me with that. I came with a new rifle. That was part of my issue, with a scope that I had never shot before. But he helped me work it out. I didn't have any really big issues. He's really great at, he was very organized and motivating and helpful, especially for women. We go in there and most of us don't really know a whole lot. But he helps us work through all of it.
Kim, with this being your first firearms course and your first rifle course, is there anything that you wish you would have known prior to day one of that class?
That's probably more a question for Sherry.
I'm such an idiot. I meant to kick that to Sherry.
No, that's okay, because that was like my third rifle class, but it was with a new rifle. So that's probably a better question for her.
I think Andy's going to fire me after this episode. I swear to God, I deserve it. All right, Sherry, I'm going to edit that part out where I messed up. It's, in the post, it's going to look like I'm a great podcast host. So Sherry, that same question to you, as with that being your first rifle course, is there anything you wish you would have known prior to, day one of that class?
No, I think the way the way I went in, knowing nothing was the best way for me to go in. I think that my biggest takeaway is what I learned is I don't need an AR. I prefer to train with handguns, and for my self-defense needs, it's just, and long range shooting doesn't interest me. So I'm glad, my biggest takeaway is I'm glad I didn't go out and buy a badass AR. Well, in California, I don't even know if you can get one of those, but I'm glad I didn't go buy one and buy the whole setup, because it's not for me at the moment. It might be later when I move out of state. I'm hoping to move to Texas, but not today. Yeah. So my biggest takeaway is stick to what I have, and just keep learning what I've got. So I was glad I took it for that reason. I thought, you hear so much about it, and I learned I don't need one today.
Yeah,
there's
everyone.
Yeah. And I was going to say, there's probably no better place than to learn that than in a class. And I'd imagine there are a ton of people that would save a ton of time and money if they went out and took a class on a platform that they don't own prior to investing that time and money into buying a gun. And, we have students show up in class sometimes and we're like, man, I really wish you would have taken this class before you went out and bought that $800 gun or that $600 or whatever it is, because you would have saved yourself a lot of time and agony on that thing. I want to dig in a little bit on something that Sherry said, Josh. With the AR not being for her, where do you think the AR should fall within somebody's home defense or self-defense plan? And is it a viable tool, specifically talking about home defense?
I am a hardcore AR guy, especially for home defense. That is my go-to. Everybody's house is different. We talk about that in class. We get into some home defense aspects of the AR platform. Basically, what thresholds you have. Do you live in a cabin on 100 acres? You have a whole different threshold than somebody who lives in a 3-2 in a neighborhood, as opposed to me, who lives in a 1-bedroom house out in the middle of nowhere with just a bunch of alligators around you, right? So everybody's threshold is different. Everybody's going to have different needs. I'm hardcore rifle. It's lots of follow-up shots, easy to control the weapon, easy to clear the house. But most importantly, what you're using for home defense, you have to be proficient with. And I think that's paramount. If you are proficient with a Glock 19 and you are uncomfortable with your AR, don't go to the AR for your home defense. Carry that Glock 19, right? It has enough rounds. It can have a light on it. You should be proficient with it. You should be low light, somewhat savvy with it, right? Not blinding yourself, but have high lumens on there where you're, you can get your correct ID of your target. You can control a suspect if you need to with your high lumens. So that's kind of my take on it. I prefer the AR, but if a handgun's what it is, if that's what you're proficient with, I'm not going to bash it. I'm pretty anti-shotgun. I know that's a horrible thing to say because everybody likes to talk about racking the 12 gauge and scaring the guy away. But the gun carries 7 rounds, man. You don't have a light on it. It's 28 inches long. You don't shoot it. When I ask people, hey, how many rounds do you shoot out of your pistol when you go to the range? Oh, I don't know, 100, 200, 300. Do you take your shotgun? Well, no, it's my home defense gun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you do take it to the range, how many rounds do you shoot? Well, I took it to the range when I got it. So, okay. So the weapon that you are going to depend your life on, you fired less than a box of shells through it. That's one way to do it, So that's kind of how I rank them. I rank them AR, pistol, shotgun. But there's people that are proficient with a shotgun, and hey, if you can run it, man, that's great, And there's people that love to shoot the damn things. I'm just not one of those people, so it's not very high on my list. But the AR remains top, right? It's like I said, the setup that I run is 16 inches overall on the barrel length. I got a good high lumen light on it. I've got a 1.5 optic that's fixed. It doesn't have batteries. It's got an etched reticle. I don't ever have to worry about it working. And I'm familiar with the weapon, but like I said, that's paramount, is being comfortable with it. But for me, if you can get comfortable with the AR, that's what I would push for.
Yeah, that whole shotgun racking it to scare the criminal away or whatever, the attacker, it irks me too. I just think it's kind of silly stuff. But Sherry brought up a good point that we don't really often talk about on our course, because it's usually instructor, it's student, and we talk about their course, right? And so Sherry, you just have a little bit of different perspective of like, yeah, I took a rifle course, I took an AR course. It's not for me. And I think that's actually a good perspective to have. And to follow up with what Josh talked about was, if you're not proficient with the weapon system, then don't use it for self-defense. Kind of common sense, it almost seems like. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But Josh, I want to ask you a quick question. So one of my buddies, he's had an AR for a while. He's not really proficient with it. He's kind of shooting it every now and then. And he messaged in our private message, hey, what's a good all-around AR, round? What should I be looking at? And so some back and forth between me and a buddy between, 55, 62 grain, etc. So what's your opinion on that?
For learning that platform, it sounds like he's not burning enough rounds through it. If he's not really proficient with it, dude, whatever you can get that's 55 grain and burn through it. I'll be honest. There's a big box store here in Texas called Academy, and they sell some green tip. It's a Winchester ammo. It says it's 855. I'll take your word for it. But it's inexpensive. I haven't had any issues with it running. It's a little bit dirty, but other than that, I don't have a problem with it. The biggest thing I see. What's that?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, like I said, the biggest issue I see with the ARs is not running enough rounds. You can't work through rounds, or you can't work through problems with 20 rounds on your AR and be like, well, I didn't get any better. I know you didn't. You didn't put near enough time on the trigger. And it's not one day. You also can't take a brick to the range and think that, you know what, I'm going to be better when I leave here today. It's kind of like anything else. It's going to take some small increments over time and getting used to it. Dry fire is critical. And people preach, man. I'm buddies with Mike Ox, and that dude has made a lifetime out of hammering on dry fire, and people don't see how important it is. And it's the same thing with the AR. Taking a couple snap caps with an AR and working mag reloads, working your sight picture on the AR is huge. And I can scream this until I'm blue in the face and people won't do it. Now they'll sit there and they'll watch Yellowstone until they freaking melt into a bubble in their couch, right? Because they're going to see what Rip's going to do on TV. But if I'm like, hey, I just need 5 minutes. If you will take 5 minutes and you put 3 snap caps in a freaking magazine and run it through that rifle on the commercial breaks, you'll be so much more proficient. They're like, oh, well, man, I can't really do that because I got to scroll on Facebook between, Rip kicking someone's ass, and that's more important. So it's hard to get it across, but it's repetition. Live fire, dry fire, you name it. If he's not proficient, but I'll be honest, I can't think of a time that I shoot anything other than 55 grain ammo. Except probably other than what's loaded in it right now, which is gold dot, maybe 62s. Don't get me the line. It's I don't try to reinvent the wheel. The FBI spends more money on testing ammunition than anybody else. If they put it out and say this is the ammo we use, you know what? That's probably what I'm using. It's the same thing with my handguns, law enforcement side. I run the Spear gold dots. They're just kind of a battle proven deal.
I like it. Hey, Kim, so we talked about an obstacle for the course. Like, what was kind of your obstacle? What was your favorite part of the class?
Oh, gosh. I just love shooting ARs. Once I got it down and got, the sight picture in, and it's just fun. It's a fun thing to do. And I don't use it for self or for home defense. I just like to shoot it.
Can you hear me?
Waiting on you, Jeremy.
Sorry, dude. I had a little.
Oh, wait, yeah. Okay. I couldn't hear anything.
No, sorry. I had a little robot issue going on my mic and my earphones. Josh, what skills do you want students to walk away from that class having? If there's like, hey, this is the skill that I want every student to walk away from this class having become more proficient at, and then continue to practice in their free time or at the range. What do you think the most critical skill is with the AR?
basic knowledge. That's all I'm trying to convey in this class is basic knowledge. And the girls are right. It is like trying to drink out of a fire hose, 100%, because so in the class, it will be your first day holding an AR-15, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, we're in a lecture, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I literally have you laying in the dirt shooting that AR. So it is this massive information dump, and there's no way you're processing all of it. And at the same time, I'm not one of these instructors who I don't Willy Wonka shit, man. I can't sugarcoat it, it's just not what I do. So if you're having a hard time, I'm going to point it out. You're having a hard time, even if you're, I'll be honest, and I hate to say this because it give away one of my secrets. Even if you're the best student in the class and you're kicking ass, I'm still going to talk shit. It's just to make you think, right? I want you constantly, I want your brain engaged with it while you're going over this platform. And I want you retaining the information. And like I said, it's so much information. I don't expect you all to it, but I want you 2 days after the class, you should be able to walk into your kitchen or wherever that AR is, pick it up, drop that back pin, pull out that bolt carrier group, pull out the charging handle. Cool. I know where these go. Put them back in, close the rifle, clear it, and know you're good to go. And if somebody asks you to load that rifle, you can take that magazine, jam the magazine in, charge the rifle, put a round on target, roll safeties, back it down. And just, I mean, it's nothing spectacular. Like I said, I don't reinvent the wheel. It's just a small series of simple movements, and we just do them repetitively and somewhat painfully. But we do them over and over till you get a basic knowledge of that weapon. Is basic knowledge a skill? I think I missed the question.
No, it's a skill. I mean, it's probably a series of skills, but I think it's you answer the right. That is the most critical thing. I have an AR. I'm not. I wouldn't. I'd probably be the average AR user, right? I don't know if I would describe myself as proficient with it. It's not. I see the benefit, and I would like to. I need to get a new freaking AR, right? Because the AR that I have, I don't think it would be a great home defense. It's a LWRC, great rifle. So maybe
that's a good brand. I have an issue with that. Is it too big? Is it too heavy? You got the wrong sight? What's the issue?
Man, I don't know. I don't shoot it enough to know, right? Like I don't shoot it enough. I'm one of these. I haven't taken an AR class just because it's like, man, this is. And for whatever reason, my brain, when I'm thinking about ARs, my brain skips the part about the AR being a great home defense rifle. Ballistically, right? You're going to get less over penetration or less penetration, right? You're going to have fewer issues with over penetration out of an AR cartridge. Am I correct in saying that? Is that?
You're 100% correct, right? But so that's one of the sacred cows that we're not allowed to talk about in training. And so a big one of my hobbies is just hurting people's feelings when we talk about things that they've heard in law enforcement training. Somebody kicked on 1911s earlier. Sorry, these guys are prime targets. If you show up with a Kimber, I'm gonna ride your ass. And it's not because it's just fun, right? The home defense shotgun. I'm probably going to give you my opinion on it several times to the point that you go put a shotgun in the car. I'm not trying to be a dick. It's just kind of the way it is. The over penetration thing. I'm so tired of having the argument. I taught it last year, and I called it home defense rifle. But it would be in part of a combat rifle course where I take sheetrock on 2x4s and set it up and shoot it with a 12 gauge, shoot it with an AR-15. And shoot it with a 9mm. Well, guess what? None of it stops. Sheetrock stops none of it. So what are we over penetrating? We even look at the number of pellets that are projected, and buckshot. That's 9 bullets going out, and people are like, "Well, you don't have to aim it; it goes down the hallway." Well, I'll show you what a double-aught buckshot pattern from a 20-inch barrel looks like at 5 yards. And it's probably not what you think it looks like. It's not much bigger than your fist. And so we hammer on all these things and to get the point across to people. But yeah, I do I get on soapboxes about that, but it's just, you get tired, like you were saying, the over penetration argument. You feel like you have it so much. I'm just like, the hell with it. At this point, I'm just going to talk shit, I feel like Google has been there for a long time. So if you still want to have the argument, you can Google it, or I can just yell at you. Either way, I'm good with it.
That's the firearms industry, man. It is still, people are still having the 45 versus 9mm debate. It is every week. I'm like, what are you guys doing, man? The answers are out there. Go take a class if you don't believe what you're reading on the internet. Uh, and that's really what people should do, is you should go out there, take a class, and kind of figure it out for yourself. That way you actually believe what you're being told and what you're seeing. I want to kind of take a big look at it, right? Not necessarily your class, but as an instructor, what do you think, as an instructor, what has been one of the invaluable lessons that you've learned with regards to teaching people or making them better shooters? Something that you've learned through your decades of experience teaching folks, right? What has been something that I guess you wish you knew as a day one instructor?
I wish everybody knew this, and I try and I push this, and I present it every class, and I always make a joke about it. But what I tell them, and what I tell my classes, and I'll say, you know what, guys, do you know how I have all this inherent knowledge about AR-15s and the Glock 17 pistol and the 9mm platform? Do you guys know why that is? Because when I was a baby, the Lord of the Firearms chose me to possess all this knowledge, and that's how I have it. And I'm basically the chosen one, right? I'm the golden child. Of course, they look at me kind of weird. I'm like, that's horse shit, right? I took classes, I learned, and every instructor that you see, he didn't know shit the day he was born. He learned it from somebody else, and that's been the biggest thing. Yes, I'm an instructor, and I love to teach it, but 100%, I'm a student. I'm a student of people like Will Petty. I am a student of people like Aaron Cowan. It just, there are guys who know so much about it and can teach you so much. Chris Seifert is in the Dallas, Texas area, or a little bit north of that. Unreal instructor. Brian Quick is a Round Rock police officer. That dude has forgotten more about shooting people and teaching people how to shoot than I will ever know. I mean, these guys, to me, are some of the most impressive firearms instructors in the world. Just listening to them talk, to me, is important. So I wish somebody had said, hey, look, man, these instructors started out like you, and the reason they're good instructors is because they went and they learned from other people, and they took what they could from each instructor, and they made it their own, and they found out what was right, and they put their time in, and they did the research. I'm big on science-based data. We can sit around, and it's hard coming from law enforcement, because what cops like to do is tell war stories. And for a long time, I thought that had a lot of value. It turns out it has zero value. What has value is actually, if we look at stats and numbers from shootings, because that's actually what's important. That's actually statistically, if this product is, or if this style is winning, if this technique is winning, then it's a good thing. And statistically, if it's a bad idea, regardless of, I did it 15 times, kind of like my Kimber runs every time, except for this time, what turns out to be a problem. So I wish people would come to classes knowing that I'm a regular guy, knowing that I'm really just a student just like them. I might have just had a couple more classes than them, and I'm just regurgitating information that I have taken. I have put in a real world situation. I have seen what works. I have looked up the data on what does and doesn't work, and I'm putting it in a format that I think that I would understand. I teach. I imagine myself in the class. How would I explain it to myself? Right. I have a high school diploma. I am from Southeast Texas. I mean, don't give me a trigonometry problem, right? Like this isn't it's not going to get anywhere with me. I need you to break this down really simple for me and explain to me how it works. And that's how I teach. And I wish somebody had said, hey man, that instructor, don't get your panties in a wad. He's not going to hurt you, man. He's not the know all end all. He's just a guy who's here to teach firearms. And so that's kind of the biggest thing I want students to know. I'm just someone here to teach, and I'm not all that different from you.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I jokingly say this in our class is, that old saying of take the laziest guy, give him the hardest job, he'll find the easiest way to do it. And I'm like, that's me when it comes to shooting. I want the meat of the potatoes. I don't want all the extra fluff. Show me how to be a better shooter. to where I can do exactly like you said, take these courses, grab the things that I love, turn them into this mold of what I want to teach and move on. But I'm with you. Like, so humble brag, Range Master, Jeremy's been a Range Master, been to Clint Smith Thunder Ranch, and just learning the statistics of like Vietnam with ARs and shooting over things versus shooting around things, what works for the FBI and all those things. I think it does it. Going back to the sacred cow, it kills a lot of those sacred cow things, but no one wants to listen because they love the old stories. We have Jeremy and I, we have a buddy on Facebook. He lives up in the mountains. He's a good old boy. He's a great guy. His name is Jason. And me and Jason, we always go back and forth. He's still, my daddy likes the M1 Garand, and he was a law enforcement officer, in 1972. And I would never have an AR because they're garbage. And we go back and forth, and it's always usually jokingly, but I'm like, man, one day I want you to take a course and actually just test those things that you do. And I've even told him, I was like, hey man, I'll come up, I'll bring my AR, you pull out your gun, let's just have a little competition. And I can't get him to do it, but it still happens very often. But anyway, Sherry, I wanted to kick it back over to you and ask you the same question I asked Kim earlier. What was your favorite part of the course?
I love Josh's statistics. He is definitely a numbers guy. I like his little bit of a rough approach. He definitely dumbed it down for us, which some of us need. I needed that, but he wasn't messing around. And if you needed to get barked at, you got barked at. But he teaches from his heart, and I think a lot of people may not see that at first, but he really wants us all to be safe. He's there because he wants us to teach us, and that's his passion. I learned a lot. I just took a course in April with him, a non-firing course, and it was probably one of my favorites I've taken in the last 6 or 7 years. And I would fly across the country to go take that again with him wherever he is. Just his approach, all about the numbers, and I can't rave enough about him.
That's cool. I want to go back and step back when you talked about taking this course. A little bit of intimidation, right? Of like, oh man, I'm really not into this rifle thing. It's kind of intimidating. It's kind of scary. And even though now today you're like, I still really don't really want an AR. Did that give you the confidence, of course, being in LA, did that give you the confidence to be able to talk about the AR system and kind of get rid of some of the intimidation and the things that people hear from the media as far as the scariness of the AR? Has that helped you like have conversations with others like that?
No, I have to admit, no, I can't walk the walk, talk the talk with ARs. No, I just, I would do the opposite. I would avoid it just because I don't have that knowledge, and I haven't taken the time to dive deeper into it because I'm not really interested in it. So no, that doesn't apply to me. But the self-defense conversation, yes. Which just that in general, yes. It's just particularly the AR, no. Not for me.
Divert that to someone else, which is a fair question. So
who's
then
the expert?
Right.
Or has the knowledge, and it's not me.
Well, I'm going to kick it back over to Kim. What about you? Do you feel confident enough into speaking about ARs? And if you ever have that conversation ability, do you have the ability, and do you do that of like kind of lowering that intimidation of how scary the black rifle is?
I do, actually. I do it a lot because like Sherry, she was terrified to even touch it, and it's the same thing as shooting any other gun. You just have to do it over and over. For me, I love long range. That's my thing. So I like to tell people about shooting long range because it's fun, But yeah, I do tell a lot of people it's not as scary as you think it is. You just have to get your hands on it and take some classes, But it's not a scary gun once you learn it.
I was also intimidated in picking up a very expensive rifle that was not mine.
Well, she was shooting. Shooting my LaRue.
I know you break it, you buy it. So
no, you can't. You cannot hurt that thing.
When we're looking at that class and the different skills and taking somebody who's never shot a rifle before and getting them comfortable and proficient with it, Josh, what are some some drills that you like to have students run in that class?
In the class, well, so the class is kind of a system. We start off with a 4-hour lecture, and I really dive off into what we're trying to do here. People want to show up and get pictures for Instagram, and that's cool. I don't have a problem with it, man. Hey, if social media is your thing, I'm 100% down. But this class is a combat rifle, and I tell them straight up, this isn't going to split your 3-gun score. I'm not going to help you with your shooting. I'm not going to improve your quick draw time. I do none of those things. This class is 100% about putting bullets in people. And, and I tell them, I need you to understand what that means, right? So we're taking this 55 grain piece of lead that has a copper jacket on it, and we're going to send it through a person at 3,000 feet per second. And I put that in my safety brief. You guys shoot on your pistols. It's coming out 1,200 feet per second. That's super cool. You need to understand the trauma this bullet's going to do. We train in remote locations where we train in Grand Junction, Colorado. I think an ambulance is an hour away, something like that. And if you get shot with a pistol, maybe not. And I tell them, look, if you guys are going to be careless with these rifles, just if you have a loved one, just tell me now which one to tell them, because you're probably not going to make it out of this bay. I'll be honest. You'll bleed out waiting on a chopper. And so that holds their attention. And so we kind of dial them in from there, and we talk about what the bullet is physically capable of, the amount of trauma that it causes, how long it takes to bleed out. We watch a video of somebody being bleeding out and dying from a rifle round. And so then I have their attention. Now they're hyper focused. And we start standing position, right? 2 rounds, reload 2 rounds. The 2 rounds, reload 2 rounds, to most people, seems basic and redundant at the 7-yard line, and they don't want to do it. The flip side is most of them can't do it. So we work that until they understand that. 2 rounds, reload 2 rounds. And we'll burn through 2 magazines and just steadily knocking that out. And then we'll back it up. We'll back it up to the 15, and we'll run it some more. So that's kind of my big one. And then I'll take that same round count and I'll switch it to a kneeling position, or I'll switch it to a prone position. And we'll go through the different shooting positions. So they've worked so many reloads. By the time they get to 2 rounds, reload 2 rounds, they can reload blindfolded, which is 90% of it. They learn. I don't tell them beforehand when they say, do we load up magazines? I say, yeah, load them up. Load all your magazines up. Well, the first thing they do is they go put 30 rounds in every magazine. And then we're out there on the firing line. Then they find out, oh, this is the part of life that sucks, because the magazine won't see it. And I watch them. And then they'll, they beat it and they shake it like a shake weight, and all this trying to get the magazine out. And it's fun. And we use it as a learning example. And if I make an example out of you in class, you remember that. So the 2 rounds, reload 2 rounds, man, that is a solid drill for just pounding it in your head. It's no different than having a kid playing shortstop and pointing the pitching machine at him from home plate and just feeding balls in there till I go to lunch. Eventually you're going to figure out how to stop that damn ground ball. Or you're just going to get hit in the head so many times you give up. Either way, I'm cool with it. It's the same thing on this 2 rounds, reload 2 rounds. We run that a lot. And it's just working the same motion over and over. They get comfortable finding that magazine, dropping the old one, jamming the new one in. Very rarely do I let them pull the magazine out and retain it. I make them let it hit the deck, and we pick it up when we're done. I don't want them to be in the habit of snatching that magazine out of there in a gunfight. So
when we went to Thunder Ranch, I had the ability to go with a couple really good buddies, and one of our friends, Tim Knight, he's a Thunder Ranch junkie. He's been there so many times. And so when we were driving there, I don't know how many 20s worth of magazines we had. They had me in the back seat loading magazines for the class. That way we had all our magazines loaded. And one thing that Tim had me do is he's like, hey, Andy, while you're back there loading magazines, I don't want you to put 27 rounds or 29 rounds or 30 rounds. I want you to put 10 in one and 12 in another, 22 in one, 15 in one. And he's like, I would just want you to fill every magazine up with random numbers of ammunition. And I was like, why? Why aren't we just loading it? Because this was my first real official AR class. And he said, you'll see when we get there. And so that was one thing of like, you learned automatically because it's like, oh man, 10 rounds, got to reload. Oh, 12 rounds, got to reload. Oh, this one's longer. So we were reloading that for those 3 days, just nonstop. And it was already preset and I didn't really understand why he did it. But the reload thing of getting that repetition was pretty cool. I really like doing that. So do you have a magazine? Do you require the amount of magazines for your course? How many you want?
I tell them bring 3 mags because you see aluminum magazines showed up that should have been thrown in the trash probably 15 or 20 years ago. And again, that's something I stress. You tell them, look, these magazines, guys, I know you guys love your magazines, especially when they go and get like purple anodized aluminum bottoms or the names embroidered on them and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, you need to understand that is a depreciating asset. That is not your magazine for life, right? That thing has a spring in it and it has a finite amount of time. It is going to be on this planet and it needs to go in the garbage can when you're done with it after that. And so we stress that. And a lot of times I throw magazines on the range. I throw shit, right? Like trying to get the point across here that it's okay. This is a tool. If I was a mechanic and I picked up a snap-on wrench and I threw it across the garage and I picked it up and it was broken, I probably wouldn't buy any more of them. We're at the same level with our ARs, man. That's what I need. I need that out of my optic. I need that out of my magazine. I need that out of the rifle. And so that's kind of the thing. Bring 3 magazines. We might break one during the class. It's okay. You need to be able to do reloads. But I bring magazines. I'm not too hard on them. But we also expose cheaper magazines, magazines made by companies that shouldn't be making magazines, selling them to people for home defense or at all. We expose those, and I'll show them. I'll hold them up and say, "Look at the brand on this magazine. You see that it does not run. You see that it's brand new. What does that tell you? This is junk, right?" And I point that out as much as I can because I want people to have the knowledge that they just don't. And there's no way. And it's super overwhelming to look at the firearms industry, to look at instructors and to read their bios, and then you show up at class and the first thing people think is, well, I don't want to make a mistake and be singled out. Nobody wants to be singled out. I'm telling you, if you're in my class, I'm trying to single you out. So you can avoid it all you want to. I may single you out for your boots. It don't make a damn what it is, right? I'm trying to throw you off of your game and get you so rattled and get you so nervous and then bring you back down. We're trying to do boot camp here in 16 hours, not 16 weeks. And that's kind of the goal of it. So bring 3 magazines, and if they don't run, I'll let you know. Or you'll see it in the weapons.
Yeah, I picked up a couple of the Shield Arms magazines for my Glock 48. The first gen ones, when everybody was hating on them and saying, "Oh, they're not going to run, they're not tested." And by a couple, I mean, I think I have like a dozen of them now. And I took a Tom Givens course with it out in Casa Grande, Arizona. I don't know if you've ever been out to that range, but we're shooting from, it's concrete and dirt. So, for 3 days, I'm dumping partially loaded mags onto the concrete and into the dirt, and they ran just fine, right? And there was part of the reason I took them out there with that is because I wanted to make sure that they were going to run, and I wanted to find out for myself whether or not, hey, all this negative talk and all this positive talk, what is it? Is it working for me? So, for me, it was, I forget how many rounds we ran it, but it was 3 days of dumping the mags on the concrete. So I'm confident in the mags that I have with my personal defense ammo in there, the Spear Gold Dots. That's what I'm running in my Glock 48. We were talking a little bit about drills just a minute ago, and I want to take a quick minute to talk about our sponsor, the RangeBuddy.App. And then kind of just want to kick it around the room. When you guys are going out to the range for your personal practice sessions or training sessions, how do you figure out what drills you're going to run? And when's the last time you found a new drill or a drill you hadn't shot in the past? And whoever wants to kick that off, or that's a terrible way to do it, right? So Sherry, if you go out to the range to practice or to have fun shooting, how do you figure out what drills you're running? Are you going to run?
The beauty of it is I don't. I go to a class and let them tell me what to do. We've been talking in our house about going and setting it all up, but that just doesn't excite me. I like being part of a group, and I figure leave it to the experts to tell me what drills. I did one recently. I tried to train once a month, and it was shooting at 5 yards, 10 yards. It was very basic. It was in an indoor range, and I learned more with going all the way out to 20 and then bringing it back. I thought, wow, just going back to the basics almost every time. It doesn't have to be an advanced class. I probably learn more with just going back to the basics. The advanced stuff's really fun to get in the dirt and shoot from different positions, but um, learning from an instructor what drills, that's what excites me.
Kim, what about you? How are you figuring out the drills that you're going to run when you go to the
Well,
range?
the same way. I mean, it's usually in a class. I usually have an instructor. If I go by myself, it's really just target practice, you know, drawing from the holster, which I need a lot more practice at. But yeah, it's usually with an instructor. I like having instruction. I like somebody telling me what I'm doing wrong, what I'm doing right, what I can improve on.
How about you, Josh? How do you determine when you go out to do your self practice, what do you determine that you're going to use drill wise? How do you mix it up?
I try to test myself. I always warm up at the range. I feel like it's important. I feel like it's important when you're going to train. And there's a big distinction, especially in law enforcement, between training and qualification, and it's missed by so many people. Those aren't the same thing. Qualifying and training are two different things, and they serve two separate purposes. And so I try to consider it training, and no different than when I was lifting weights competitively. I mean, you didn't just walk in and grab 400 pounds and start pumping it, right? So you had to warm up, you had to get set, you had to get in your rhythm, you had to get in your training mode. Same thing. You will see me at the 7-yard line popping 5-round strings, right? I try to make sure that I don't miss headshots at 7 yards, right? If I'm missing my high thoracic hits or my headshots at 7 yards, I need to slow it down. I'm doing something wrong. Once I get good, once I get a little bit warmed up, I work distance. I shoot a lot of B8s. I try to hold it 25 yards. And some days it works, and some days I embarrass myself. I firmly believe that you can have good days and bad days in training. If I got a lot going on, if pick a topic, something's wrong with the kids or something's going on at work, you name it. It's anything could be throwing you off, or you don't have your mind straight. And so I like the distance. I'll go out to 40 yards, work myself in on a 12 by 20 and make sure I'm dialed in. And after that, I'll work from the holster. I do a lot of holster work. I'm not really a concealed carry instructor. I worked narcotics for 3 years and literally carried some bullshit guns in my waistband and all kinds of stuff just outside of Houston. And had I known then, hey, this is not the way you do it, but I was doing it the way the guys that have been doing it for 20 years told me to do it. And so I was carrying a weapon that I didn't have the trigger time on, just shoved down the back of my pants instead of actually carrying a holster, things like that, that I preach on nowadays. And I try to remember that when I go to the range. So take the gear I'm going to carry, right? So if it's the Filster or whatever holster I want to carry, I take that. I feel dialed in with it, and I'll start myself back. I'll warm up. Warming up is key, and then I'll work it in 40 yards, 30 yards, 25 yards, and really make sure I stay dialed in. And then 2 from the holster, 3 from the holster, 5 from the holster. I don't do a lot of spinning and shooting. I know it looks cool on Instagram to do the El Presidente with your eyes closed and one leg in the air. And there's a lot of people cooler than me that can do it. I am meat and potatoes, man. I want rounds on target quickly. People will tell you some shit like, pick it right, smooth is fast and fast is smooth, or whatever the hell the saying is, but or slow is slow and smooth is smooth and fast is fast. That doesn't change. So until you can hit the target consistently 7 yards, 10 yards, 25 yards, you should work on those reps. And that's what I do. I don't even know that I would call them drills. Man, at the 15-yard line, I fire 3 rounds in holster. And then I'll go to 5 rounds. The only thing I really do is vary the round count because I don't want to get people hung up on going back to the bucket after a specific number of rounds. That's a training scar that we do see in law enforcement, and I try to be cognizant of that. The only other thing I do is I try to have some visual indicators. It really works well if you have a partner. And we see it in civilian shooting, also in law enforcement. How do you guys know? Let me ask you guys this. How do you know when to fire when you're on the firing line? Either in your class or training or qualification, how do you know when to fire?
You're told to do so.
You're told to do so.
Mm-hmm.
In the real world application, does anybody tell you when to shoot?
No, usually the bad guy.
A bad guy. Is he going to tell you fire or threat? No. So he's going to give you an indication that you're going to have to pick up visually.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But you just told me all your training was you got the command to fire audibly.
Mm-hmm.
So which is it?
You're speaking my language.
Right. So I try to push that, right? It's like, so everybody here is training for this audible tone, whether it's a shot timer, or if somebody's screaming threat in your back and behind your ear, whatever it is. But when it comes down to it, that's not actually how we wind up in shootings in the real world. We wind up with visual context. There's actually a book put out, and I'm kicking myself. I can't think of the guy's name. It's called Building Shooters. And it's about that contrast and training, that deficit that we have. And the guy actually has a machine that projects the red and green lasers. You talk about a drill, a training drill. I mean, if it's green, you shoot. If it's red, you don't.
It's one of the Johns.
I
think it's John Murphy, John Hearn. I'm pretty sure it's one of the John firearms instructors.
I could literally kick myself in the ass when I think of the guy's name. The name of the book is Building Shooters. People go out and read it, buy it. It's a night and day difference. Again, it's one more sacred cow we're killing. Some guy in a red shirt standing there screaming threat behind you. That's not applicable in the real world, and it won't ever be. Because that's not what's going to happen. You're going to have to visually pick up on those cues and make that decision. So train for that. But that's my thing is I paint targets and call them out, red, blue, pink, whatever. That works well if you got a range buddy with you. Paint one target pink and paint one target blue, and he'll call out blue 2 rounds. Cool. Pink 4 rounds. Now I have to identify the target by sight and then adjust my round count number. So those are some of the things I stick to.
So Josh, I got something that you're probably going to absolutely love, and it's the RangeBuddy.App, right? It's a collection of over 130 shooting drills, right? It's sorted by the required target. So if you're going to the range with a B8, it'll sort out all the B8 targets. You can filter it by the skills that you want to work. So if you're wanting to work on presenting the handgun from concealment, engaging multiple threats, single hand only, right? But it also it's the only virtual firearms instructor that you carry around within your pocket. And this thing was born out of that same kind of line of thinking, right? For me, it's one of the taglines is, gunfights are random. Shouldn't your training be? So you can go in here and you can set up the different command targets that you'll have. So red, yellow, blue, green, purple, numbers, circle, square, triangle. So you select the different target options that you have. Or if you don't have a command target, you can print one from the app. So, that's an example of the command targets that you'll have. And then you can tell it, hey, I want to run between 2 and 4 commands per set. So before it gives you the reholster command, it'll randomly choose between 2 and 4 commands. You can do audible commands if you want to work visual indicators. So instead of it saying 1 red circle, it'll pop up, it'll display the shape or the color or the number, right? It'll flash that on the screen. Probably my favorite part of it, or one of the favorite parts of it, is you can enable shoot or no shoot commands. Let me turn my volume up here. I have it down.
Reholster. Reholster.
So it'll give you a reholster command so you can safely reholster. And then it's going to... Right, so that was a no-shoot image. Right, I have it... that one is just shoot or no-shoot images, but if you wanted to do... if you wanted it to coincide with the verbal command, it'll do both for you.
Yellow. 1. Reholster.
And then say you want to work on some
4.
movement stuff.
Move.
It'll give you a random move command. You can use your phone's accelerometer or a delay time. Once you stop moving or your movement slows down, it'll give you another random command. And that was came from that same kind of rationale and thought, right? It's like, hey, in a gunfight, there's a timer, but there's not a go timer, right? You're usually going to be reacting to some kind of visual stimulus and not the threat command or whatever it is. And kind of what the iteration before this is a target system that I'm working on, that I have a patent application in on. So that's the RangeBuddy app, right? And it's available on Apple and Android. It's the virtual instructor component of it is my favorite kind of tool to bring to the range with me, right? Because if I don't have Andy there with me or somebody else there with me, there's no way for me to have a command that was randomly chosen, right? So this thing, I put it on, put it in my pocket, hook it up to my Bluetooth Ear Pro or my earbuds, throw them under my ear protection, and then just go. And next thing you know, I'm like, all right, shit, man, I'm down. I just went through 4 or 5 magazines. And then kind of the collection of shooting drills is for me, it's like the icing on top. This month's featured drill in the RangeBuddy app is it's Pat McNamara's 5-second standards drill. It's a 6-round drill shot from 7 yards with the 5-second par time. It's 3 stages of fire. So it'll walk you through exactly what that course of fire is, the target that you need, how to set it up, how to score it. And then you can enter it into the little tracker, and it will, once you do that, it'll show you where you rank compared to everybody else. And if you upload a picture of your target, it would be on there. But that person used an M&P but did not take a picture of his target. So that's the RangeBuddy app. It's available on iTunes and Android. iTunes, no, that's the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. So if you haven't,
I gotta say,
go ahead, bud.
Oh, so I gotta say, I agree with you. Using the RangeBuddy app, there's times where I think we've talked about this before. Well, I'll go to the range and I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna go practice. I really don't know what I want to do today, so I'll just kind of go through the RangeBuddy app, and you can actually randomize it if that's right, Jeremy. You randomize it, and it'll just pull up a drill for you to shoot, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that one. And then the virtual instructor, Josh, like you were mentioning, using sound cues versus just the beep of a shot timer, which when you're by yourself is usually the easiest way to kind of get a random go start kind of thing, right? So being able to do that, having the different targets with red triangles and blue circles and 1, 2, 3, 4, just being able to add a little bit of thought process and mind game to it is a huge benefit. So I definitely recommend you guys check out RangeBuddy. You're going to really enjoy it. Jeremy's created that thing. As you can tell, he's kind of excited about it. And as soon as when you started talking about visual cues versus listening cues and all that stuff, you could just see his face kind of glow. So go download that RangeBuddy app and check it out.
I'm on iTunes right now and I don't see it. So it's not on iTunes?
It's at the Apple Play Store.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so, and I think that it's RangeBuddy Pro is what it is in the App Store. Or okay. No, it's actually just RangeBuddy in the App Store. Let me
Okay.
Yeah, man, and it was like I was like, is this guy are you a plant for the RangeBuddy app?
I've never heard of it, honestly.
It's fairly new. I recently released it, and for some reason, it is not showing up for me. I'll have to look into
I'm
that.
in the App Store too. I'm in the Apple App Store, and it's not showing up there either.
But just because I don't know about it, I mean, I live in a cave, man. So it's not saying a whole lot if I didn't know about it. I was on my boat, and I probably missed the whole damn thing. So
yeah, check it out. I'm going to. It's something, it's fairly new to the market. Got a couple new upgrades that I'm working on, and man, I didn't mean to turn into like a 15-minute plug for the RangeBuddy app, but that's but that's, as an instructor, that's one of the things that we don't, or that's one of the things for me as a student excites me to hear other instructors talking about, because the gunfight doesn't start with a go command or a beep, right? It's going to be a visual indicator, right? And it's going to be something that you haven't seen or practiced on the range, most likely, even using a RangeBuddy app or the other training tools that you have. So, as a student, it's super exciting to see, and it's reassuring to see instructors having that same kind of thought process. So before we take up any more of y'all's evenings, I want to go around the horn, and any parting advice that you have for our listeners, and then we'll start up top with you, Sherry. So, any parting advice that you have for our listeners?
Definitely take classes. If it's something that, I can say for a lot of females, since I'm around a lot of females, if it's something you're thinking about doing, just go do it. Go with a friend, go by yourself. I decided to go on Yelp, found somebody, took an hour private lesson with them. That was how my day one. Didn't want to do it, but just do it. Take a friend if you have to, take somebody to learn with you. The buddy system's great. But be open-minded, take everything you can. I love hearing all the different stories on situations that come up, all the self-awareness stuff. You can't have enough self-awareness training. It doesn't always have to be live fire training. Lectures are great. Just absorb it all and learn to defend yourself. Don't walk around thinking it's not going to happen to me, because this is a pretty crazy world we live in, and it could, and train, and find the best trainers out there. That I've been able to do that. I've been able to train with some of the best. I've been fortunate to be able to travel and train. I have a partner, Kim. She'll meet me anywhere. We'll meet each other anywhere. It's our hobby now, and it gives us girls time, and we're learning a skill that is a lifelong skill, and we can help other women around us. I meet women all the time that talk about wanting to take a class, but of course a lot of them don't. I'm not going to push it on them. They have to do it when they're ready, but get up and go do it. My motto with everything is get off your ass and go do it. So that's my approach.
I like that. Getting out of your comfort zone, right, is a big deal. And we were talking about this in the pre-show, Sherry, about my wife is now doing hot works, and so she's dragged me along, and it's been an interesting ride. I'm actually starting to like it. So I think it's cool of just getting out of your comfort zone beyond just shooting classes. Like you said, one thing, and the reason why I want to talk about this is you mentioned something that was really good and important to me, and personal awareness, right? We hear the whole situational awareness of like, be aware of your situation all the time. And it's good stuff, right? But we also have to understand our personal awareness of like, what are we doing? What position are we putting ourselves in? So I just really like that. And I thought it was a cool thing. But kicking it over to you, Kim, what's some parting advice that you would give to our listeners?
All of that, all of what Sherry said. It's funny because we've been best friends for 48 years, and everything that she just said was everything I was going to say.
We're mind readers.
Literally.
Actually, we took a training class at A Girl and a Gun. It was, if she and I, you had to double up with somebody. Fortunately, we were partners. If she and I were in Target or a big box store, what our plan would be. They'd put us in there, and how we'd communicate with each other. It could happen. It really could happen. Now, she and I are out shopping in the workout clothes section, and boom, 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 something happens. And train that way. Do scenario-based training instead of just static training. Just get off your ass and do it.
Yeah, and find the way I did it was I found a girl and a gun. I stepped out of my comfort zone. I've been around guns my entire life. My dad was a cop. My husband's in the Marine Corps. I was terrified of guns. So I had to step out of my comfort zone. And the way I did it was I found a girl and a gun. And that has been the best experience of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten to meet so many great instructors and women and travel. You know, it's a really great group of women.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get people like Josh to come and train us.
And we follow him around.
And then we follow
Yeah.
around.
I agree. So when I did the Range Master course out at KR training at Carl Rinn's place, 17 of the 30-something students were a girl and a gun student. So
Wow.
that's where I met Robin. And it was pretty cool to sit there with about a 50-50 group of women versus men in a course, and being able just to listen and learn from them. And just, it was really, really cool. So I think Girl and a Gun is an amazing opportunity for ladies who wants to get started, and it makes you comfortable getting out of that comfort zone. Right. But I have to call BS on one thing real quick, because you guys have mentioned it twice, that you guys have been friends for 48 years. Neither one of you look like y'all are even close to being old enough at 48, because I'm 47 and y'all look a lot younger than me. I'm just saying.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a big compliment. But yeah, we're over 50.
That's awesome. All right, Josh, you're up. Give us some parting advice, sir.
Man, the information is out there. The training is out there. You don't have to stick to your 40 caliber and your Serpa holster. Man, I mean, it's just the information is available. They actually, so there's a service, and it's 100% free, and I recommend everybody use it. And it's literally, you can go to your web browser and you type it, and it's Google, right? And so you throw that in there, and you can literally find damn near anything. And then if you have a question about that, you know what you can do? You can call people. There are so many firearms instructors that you can call, Facebook message their business, and they will literally talk to you for absolutely free. You can ask questions. I'm one of them. Say, hey, what about this guy? Should I take this guy's class? Get somebody else's opinion. Vet them. Find your friends. Find organizations. There's a million of them, but Girl and a Gun is one I teach for. I couldn't tell you how many members there are. There's 600 chapters or something. I mean, it's insane, right? It's unreal, and they grow by double digits every quarter. And so there's thousands upon thousands of people that you can ask about training. Don't be scared to ask questions. Don't be scared to be new. Don't be scared to screw something up. It doesn't take a lot of money. It just takes a little bit of time. The training is out there. The answers are out there. You don't have to be a victim. You don't have to be scared. When people come through my classes, people come in my classes apprehensive and they walk out. And I get so many phone calls and texts and Facebook messages. People say, man, you know, I was in this situation and I felt better because I thought about what you told me, and I put my hand on my knife and I walked through that parking lot and I stared down everybody I looked at, and I got in my car and drove off. Goddamn right you did, you know, because you're not a victim. And I try to push that on to people. And yeah, it's not pretty. It's not, you know what, I spent 6 years, or I spent 3 years in sex crimes and 3 years in narcotics. And it's not pretty when violence comes down to it. But if it's the difference of you going home to your family or not, it is important. And there's, you know, there's lots of ways to do it, man. The way I do it is my way. It's a way I teach it, but it's not the only way. So there's plenty of opportunities, plenty of people to learn from, plenty of ways to do it. But the main thing, like they both said, just do something. Do something. Don't sit there on your couch and scrolling on your phone and just think, well, it'll never happen to me. Because everybody can tell you pretty much a story of somebody who said it'll never happen to me that's a victim. And it doesn't have to be that way.
100%. We another book that I like to recommend in classes, When Violence is the Answer, by Tim Larkin, and he talks about that in the book, about how, you know, when violence is the answer, it's the only answer, and it's a dark, dirty, rough thing to use, but it's very important to have that mindset to be able to do that and not be that victim. So I really like that. Josh, where can we find you online? I know you mentioned you're doing mostly law enforcement style classes, but if you have anything civilian wise or even for law enforcement guys, how can they find you?
Yeah. So actually, as of October 1st, Texas Combat Systems will actually be transitioning into loadtech.net, which is more of a commercial law enforcement based system. But loadtech.net, you can reach me there. You can always find me on Facebook, Texas Combat Systems. You can find me and my name, Josh Crosby, on Facebook. I don't have some fancy like celebrity personality, literally, bro, you could just add me as your friend. It's cool. Send me a message. I don't care. Any of that. Reach out to Growing a Gun. They have my contact information. You can Google and find good and bad things about me. Just reach out to me. It's not a problem. But Texas Combat Systems on Facebook or loadtech.net. Just let me know if you have any questions, and I answer questions. It is absolutely free. There's there's no. I know there's instructors that say, you know, if you want information or if you want answers from me, take a class. I will never give somebody that answer ever. If you want to know something, ask me. If I have the answer, if I have my opinion or my answer, I'll give it to you. If I don't have the answer, I promise people I will find somebody that does. My range of contacts in the firearms and self-defense world literally wraps around the globe with some of the baddest motherfuckers you will ever meet. And I will find out the answer and I will get it back to you.
Hoorah, I like it.
Well, I'm going to give you guys we're going to give you the rest of the evening back. Have a happy 4th of July tomorrow, everybody. I got y'all down there in Texas. I'm sure you're going to have a fun time. Are you allowed to celebrate the 4th of July in California? I don't know.
Well, we go to the beach with our guns with us, and we get in the sand. We've got our guns with us. Well, we do, but yeah, it's odd. We actually worked out in our. We're the only ones in class in our hot yoga class in a flag mini shorts. Nobody else had them in there, but I did, hoping somebody would say, "Hey, what's that about?" But anyway, yeah, we do.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Well, y'all enjoy the 4th. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Y'all stay safe, and we'll see you next week.